Okay. Love the technology. Hey.
Yes, yes, yes. So, good evening, good evening, good evening, everyone. This is Sharon, your retirement coach diva, and I am excited because we're here another year. So, happy new year to everyone. Been looking forward to this event for the past few months, and we are here with Ann-Marie. And Ann-Marie, I can say so much about her. She's
Oh,
one of my sister girls from Girl Trek. We walk in
yeah.
Saturday mornings, getting our fitness in and fellowshipping together. But she's so much more. So I am here tonight, and Ann-Marie and I are here tonight to talk about um, everyday situations dealing with finances and retirement, and sharing our experiences and how things work together. But Ann-Marie, I still said that she is one of my Girl Trek sisters, but she also is a podcaster and has her own podcast. But I'm not going to tell Ann-Marie's story because that's what she's here to do and for us to have our conversation. So, Ann-Marie, tell us, how did you get started in doing your podcast and all that you do?
Okay, well, Sharon, first of all, thank you for having me. I am so excited to have this conversation with you and to talk with you. Thank you for mentioning my podcast. It is called About This Life. And About This Life is to capture those pivotal moments that had an impact on us. Now, here's the thing, sometimes those pivotal moments gave us a belief system that we might have to adjust, that we might have to change, that we might have to reconsider and think about. So when I talk with my guests, we're always talking about the things that shaped us and whether or not they serve us. But some of the other things, I think about all the different roles that I play. I'm a mom. I have to shout out because I have two adult sons. Okay, I'm a boy mom. I love my boys, and even though they're adults, they still my boys, right?
Always our babies.
Always our babies. Educator, I love to write. Uh, I love God. Amen. I
Amen.
love
That's
God.
right. That's right.
Amen.
First and
And
foremost.
if those are the roles that I fill, I would suppose who I am is a reflective person, and I am a person who I'm evolving. And since First Lady Michelle Obama took the other becoming word, the word becoming for the title of her book, I'm going to go with evolving.
Right, right. That is great. Yes, one thing that I was in a meeting, they asked us to select a word for the year. And so it sounds like your word is evolving for the year. And you could tell us what that means to you. What does evolving mean to you?
Evolving. I've got a birthday coming up, a big one. When I look at all of the pictures that has happened over just the last 5 years,
Mhm.
I'm just like, oh my goodness, I was a different person then. I did that then. And pictures have a way of telling a story. So when I look at the pictures, I can remember the events. And I remember the event in terms of how I started my podcast was actually 2023
Mm.
knee replacement. Okay, that story isn't sexy, right? So I'm I'm sitting at home, I'm bored because all of my friends are still working. And I'm just like, what am I going to do? And I'm scrolling through, and I see this ad by a woman named Stacy Lauren. God bless Stacy Lauren. She starts heads up or the founder of the Do the Thing community. And she had a challenge, start your own podcast. Thinking I'm sitting at home, I'm off work. What have I got to lose?
Mm.
So I joined her challenge, and lo and behold, the community is phenomenal. So that's
Wow.
how I got into podcasting. Who would have thought
Wow.
it, right?
Yes, yes, wonderful, wonderful. Over a challenge, and to see how it changed your life, and you are continuing to evolve on the different topics. Tell us a little bit about the topics that you have had on your podcast.
Okay. Uh, but I want to say I started with the shallow before I got deep. Is it okay?
Okay, okay.
I started with the shallow because uh, your audience, you see me now, right? With my gray lock. It took me a while to embrace
I know.
the
We all that
embrace
way.
it because people have this notion about what gray hair is and white hair, and I'm just like, and I fought it for the longest time. I fought it. I actually came out of 10 years with locks. I had locks in my hair, and it was part of my identity. But here's the thing, Sharon, about 2 months, not 2 months, 2 years ago, my mom passed away. There's something about changes you go through when you grieve, when you have a life impact, something that happens. So I ended up cutting my locks. I actually cut my locks a few months before she passed. I didn't know what I wanted though. So my hair was shaved, my hair was red, it was orange, it was all kinds of things. So I talked to a stylist on my podcast. You heard me mention total knee replacement. I talked with the physical therapist who took care of me. Another example on my podcast is this whole thing about going into yourself and reclaiming your younger self, talking to that inner child. Whew, I've gone through some stories with that. So I had people like Melissa Crawford on the podcast. She's the author and founder of the Queen Code. Uh, so it's just ran the gamut.
Well, wonderful, wonderful. And so we're here to talk about some realistic talk and life experiences about finances and retirement. And so we just want to make sure that our listeners are liking and sharing this information in the chat. You see
Absolutely.
Ann-Marie, her information as far as with her podcast, and where you can locate it on Spotify and Apple. And don't forget to go to my YouTube channel where you can find this as well as all our past episodes on Royalty Business Group YouTube channel. So Ann-Marie, tell me, you mentioned something about talking to our inner child, right?
Yes.
And we think back about how we evolved from where we used to be to where we are now. When it comes to finances, how have you seen the change? How have you evolved from where you were when you started to really start to understand and manage finances and to where you are now?
I saw a change. I want to credit my parents for giving me the value of saving.
Mm.
Then I saw a change as an adult, and I had to go back to what my parents taught me. I can tell you, I remember it. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. I
Oh.
remember the dime savings bank.
Mm.
What they did is they had a partnership with our school system. So my parents would give me an allowance. My allowance went to two things only. One, books, because I love to read. So Scholastic Book Fair, come on, that was
Yeah,
me.
I remember those
Yes,
days.
I was nerdy before that was an in thing. And the other thing is, I had a savings book and I would put away money every week from my allowance, and that deposit was made into the dime savings bank. That is something I've done all of my life. I taught my sons how to do that. They don't necessarily execute
Right.
what I've taught them. But I used to, back before we had most and ATM deposits and all that, I would take my boys to the SunTrust Bank here in the DMV area and teach them that, when you have your first job, you put away a percentage of your earnings. It's okay to spend and splurge and buy the things you want. You always want to save. So that was my belief system, my value. That is how I got through college. But if I want to be personal and transparent with you, I was in a marriage. I did not have agency over myself and over my finances. So what that amounts to is, my husband, my ex-husband, but husband at the time, I earned less than he did. And so it was very much a power relationship. So I didn't get to say in terms of the money and how it was spent. I didn't have agency. I was one of those people who lived in those big, beautiful houses, and everybody goes, ooh, and on. I'm like, but do you understand we don't have any money in the bank account? That sort of thing. So I lost myself,
Mm.
basically. If I can put it in those terms, I lost myself. Then when, I'm divorced now, 10 years divorce, I had to climb my way back from bankruptcy.
Mm.
And it was those lessons as a young child that helped me get to where I am now.
Wow. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that part of your story, because I know that there are others that have dealt with the same thing. I mean, myself coming through bankruptcy twice and still, building on, okay, I have to change my mindset, right? You have to, and we've talked about this before on the podcast about the mindset change that we have to have. So I completely understand. I know there are others that are out there understanding. And if you are one of those others, type in the chat that you understand and let us know that you are, part of that group. But we want to know that there's a way forward, right? And we want to
Absolutely.
always understand that we can choose to not continue to be that way. So, and sometimes it's our circumstances that force us. I always say that you are going to, when people retire, you either retire by choice or by force.
Hmm.
So when we're in a situation where we are not
In
comfortable with
control.
this happens, right? Those traumas that come up, then it's by choice or force that we can say, okay, I'm no longer going to be in this way, because otherwise we're going to continue. And what I'm starting to call the fried chicken grease, and I'm sorry, the fried fish grease. And so what I mean by that is that, when we were growing up, we had the little containers on the side, one for regular
Mhm.
grease, one for fish grease. But if you use that fish grease in something, it's going to taste like fish.
It's going to taste like fish.
It's going to taste like
You,
fish.
I wanted to add on something about the bankruptcy experience. Our word tells us that all things work together for good.
Yes.
So one would think the bankruptcy is the end of things. We were in a situation, if you remember back in 2009, around that time, our country was in a banking crisis. So as a family, we're doing all the right things. We're not exuberant spenders. We're not, let's go gamble our money and so on and so forth. But our country went through a crisis. And when one of us lost our job and you're working beneath the income that you were accustomed to, then you run into problems when it comes to the bills. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Bankruptcy, which was, and growing up was hush hush. Nobody does that. Those people are so bad. They, derelicts. They don't know how to take care of money. We went through that process and had to realize you have to remove the shame. There
Mm.
is no shame in it. It was an opportunity to start over again. My personal emergence, let me use my word, evolving from
Right.
that experience, is that when I started over again, is when I began and found my voice. That I said, no, I don't want to, I'm not going that way. That is not going to help us succeed and to rebuild. And because we couldn't come to an agreement on that, I said, I can't do this
Mm.
because bankruptcy taught me that I need to find other options than the ones that were being used.
Yes, yes, that's wonderful. So Aletha said, thanks for the share. Look at you now.
Yeah,
Oh, Lord.
look at me now.
So make sure everybody, share this information out on Facebook so others can join us and get into the conversation and type into the chat your comments because this is an engaging conversation. It's not just between Ann-Marie and myself, but it's about everybody that's listening. So Ann-Marie, as you evolved and moved on and grew and learned, pulling those skills, those that knowledge that you had from childhood that your parents instilled into you, how did that shape you to moving towards planning for your retirement?
Planning for my retirement. Oh wow. I'm a teacher, but before I was a teacher, I was in corporate America. So
Mm.
I worked for a large public relations firm and was successful at it. And one of the major reasons I changed was because I became a mom. And I had to raise children. Planning for my retirement, the 401k, the 403b for educators, it's something that I always did. That goes back again to the dime savings bank
Mhm,
because
mhm.
I knew the value. And even though I was in my 20s, I was in my 30s, I was in my 40s, I never imagined what it would be like to come and I'm on the eve of my 60th birthday and very
Oh,
proud of it, by the way.
yes, yes.
I never imagined or envisioned who I would be at this age. All I knew was I needed to save.
Mm,
Okay.
mm,
That was just inbred in me. Unlike when I talk to the millennials and they are buying things left and right, and the millennials, excuse me, the millennials are I have to have this. And this is where the emotional aspect comes in as well. Keeping up with someone else's story instead of looking at their own story, that yes, your friend might have these beautiful, wonderful things or experiences, but yet you don't know what that friend has gone through
mm,
because they're not
mm.
putting that on media. So
Right.
you don't know who's financially insecure. You don't know who, like I did. I'd spent many months sleeping on the floor, no bed.
Mm,
You don't know what people are going through. You just see the glamorous aspect of it.
mm.
And when you do that, it's always like you're driven to spend, 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 and you have so much anxiety about it. So I want our young people to understand that all that you see, you don't always know somebody's struggle. You don't
Yes,
always know the whole story,
yes.
but you do know your story.
Yes, you getting a lot of loves, hugs, hearts out here in Facebook
Oh,
land. And Dee Dee said that's facts. What you said
facts.
is facts. It's facts. Yes. Yes, Del Rio said 100. That keep it 100. So you mentioned that you are an educator. So I'm interested in knowing what information is being provided to our young people through our education system on finances.
And I have to shout out and just give kudos to our education system because I did not have it when I was growing up.
Mm,
But there's something called the JA Finance Park. It is amazing. It is a field trip of sorts. We take our students, I teach middle school. We take our students, and there are storefronts in this building, grocery store, salon, car repair shop. They're all storefronts, they're banks, there are healthcare representatives, and so on and so forth. And the kids enter with a computer, and they have a card. They are given a profile, so they are told who they are, how much money they have, whether or not, well, they are told how much money they earn each year, whether they are married or single, whether they have
Oh,
children
wow.
or not. And they
Wow.
go through this whole experience because they have X number of dollars to spend.
Mm,
So they have to figure out, am I going to buy those shoes, those Jordans, or do I need to feed my baby? And
mm.
then they take a look at how much it costs to raise a child in terms of childcare, and they're like, I'm not having any more kids. So they have that experience of decision making, and I am so grateful for Prince George's County for instilling financial literacy in terms of our children. Sorely needed, sorely needed. Yes.
Yes, yes. So Dee Dee says, bravo, kudos to all that's doing that. Financial literacy is key.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering, what came to mind actually when you talked about that is the game of life. You know, we used to play
Yes.
the game of life and you would go one way or the other. And then you had, when you got married, then you put the little person in there, then you had children. And if you went to college or you took a career, that game. And also there's a game by Robert Kiyosaki, which is it escapes me right now, but it's one. It
Okay,
has,
that's okay.
I think it's. I didn't read that for that, but there's a children's version of it and the adult version. But it just reminded me of the game, like a realistic game of life that the children can go through. So Del Rio asked, "What area is this in? Where is this place that you would describe? Where is it located?"
It is JA Finance Park, and it is near the old Redskins stadium. I keep calling them the Redskins. I can't help it. I can't get used to the Commanders. That name never stuck with me.
That's quite all right. Still, most of us
So
still do
it's in the
that.
Landover area, and it's
Okay.
accessible. It's accessible to our school system. Every single seventh grader in the district goes through there. In terms of every middle school goes through there. So I'm not sure their one-on-one experience, but you can certainly contact them.
Yes, yes. And so Del Rio said, yes, they will always be the Redskins. And Alito says she loved that game of life. And Shahara, who's out in the California area, Los Angeles, said, we need something like that here in LA. So Shahara, yeah, we have
Yes.
to see about how we can get that established out there, what the school systems are doing out there. And we know that we have some Redskins haters online, but we love you anyway, and you know who you are. So just say
So
that.
this is a rebuilding year. They're getting ready to rebuild. Okay.
Yes, yes, we are. Yes, we are. So that is, again, that is wonderful knowing what there is available, but we do also understand that that's not available to everybody. So what's some
Mhm.
tips that you feel that we could use to start this process for our young people, for our children?
I would say talk about money.
Mm,
Talk about money. Talk about money. As wonderful as my parents were, they gave me an allowance, obviously, and I invested in Dime Savings Bank, but they didn't talk about money in the household.
mm,
They didn't tell me about how much college cost.
mm,
We didn't talk about the fact that, I come from a family of five. I have four siblings, and times were hard, as each family goes through. There are times of abundance and there's times of scarcity.
Mhm, mhm,
We didn't talk about that.
mm,
Okay. So, in terms of tips, I say talk about money and their different stages. Talk about money before you get married.
mm,
Because, for example, your values may be different. I wanted to be the person who's uh, driving around, going to different camps and having summer vacations.
mm,
But at the time, he wanted a big house.
mm,
And so that means somebody had to compromise who they were to adjust to the other person. So have a conversation with the other person about what they value, what they view,
mm,
and so that you can keep your agency. The other thing I would say is talk about money in terms of education. As a teacher, I am often asked to write reference letters, okay, for private high schools. Private high school sounds wonderful and glamorous. And by the way, though I teach in a public school, I have experience with private high school because at some point both of my boys attended a private school. And when you get past the shock of tuition, you get past the shock of transportation because normally there's a bus that you have to pay for unless you're going to make that commute to and fro every day. There is an elitist perspective
mm,
in private school. And one is made to feel that you're insufficient or you're inadequate if you don't have the latest and the most fancy clothing. And it's to an extreme extent, it's like these first word world problems. And so that experience for the boys were not positive because somehow they were made to feel less than. And, we're a middle class family. And there's the other thing in terms of values. Even if you had the money, would you spend it?
mm.
Like, okay, maybe I can afford the Michael Jordan shoes, but why am I spending that much money on Michael Jordan shoes?
That's
Just
right.
so that they can feel part of belonging to a group that shuns them anyway and would find fault with them. So those are the kinds of conversations to have when thinking about uh, private schools and the institutions where you want your children to go to. When we move up the ladder in terms of older, my experience with the college tuition, talk
Mhm.
about that too. Those plus loans are no joke. Sharon, my own loans, Sharon, are paid for. I have finished paying for my own student loans. But the plus loan that I took out for one of my sons, I'm just like, why am I still paying this? And that makes me feel some kind of way.
Mhm.
And so, in terms of the listeners, I told you I'm a reflective person. That's who I am. I think about, was this the best way that I could help my child? Did
Mm,
I have other options, in terms of him perhaps taking longer, more years and paying it slowly and so on and so forth? And I want to finally, in answer to your question, talk about the experience with aging parents. Um, Before mom passed 2 years ago, she had been sick for about at least 10 years. Mom passed at 92,
mm.
which is a beautiful age
Yes.
in terms of her transitioning over, but she's had strokes since she was in her like 70s and 80s. And the financial pressure on my siblings who had to foot the bill for in care and then nursing care. These are things that one has to think about. And
Mm,
so you got to have a plan. What are you going to do when the people you love get older?
Yeah.
have a plan.
Yes. So you know what, Ann-Marie, you kind of were reading my mind because you went from childhood all the way through adulthood. And it sounds like these are continuous conversations that we have to have. You know,
Mhm.
we start with our children and having them to understand, and just continually having them to understand, and also talking to, talking to them so they can understand the money and how to handle the money, but also talking to them and letting them understand like where you are financially, where we are
Yes.
as parents, what we can and cannot do realistically, and even to the time where we are older to say, this is what I have in place. This is what I can do. This is what I can't do, because um, there's going to be a time where they're going to have to take over, and
Mhm. Mhm.
they need to know what is in place. And we want to make sure that it's easy for them, because I grew up just like you. There was no discussion on, what came in and what went out of the household. I received what I wanted, and I knew that I had food, I had shelter, I had clothing. I could get back and forth for where I wanted to do, but I didn't know how much my parents made. They weren't going to share that with me.
Right.
They didn't have those discussions. I didn't know about I knew they were expenses, keeping the lights on food, but the struggles, I think I found out little by little, and it wasn't directly, it was indirectly. So being transparent and having those conversations are key to financial literacy in our community and our household. So Aletha put that she went through the same thing with her mom and her expenses, and I didn't have to go through that with my parents, but I've heard others who's had to go through
Mm.
similar things. And Aletha said, we have spoiled our children. They don't know
Yeah.
what it feels like to struggle, right?
Yeah, they don't know what it feels like to struggle or to plan for the unexpected. It's
Mhm,
kind of like, if I can use an example, it's like if you want to buy a car, right? You think
mhm,
about, okay, I have enough money. I'm working. I have enough money to pay the car note and the car insurance. But did you think about the mechanic fees? Did you think
mhm.
about what happens when you need
The gas,
that car repaired?
the gas.
Do you have a plan for that? Or is it just, they don't think about the extras,
Yeah,
and unfortunately they don't want to listen. And
right.
so, at some point you have to have life teach them, right?
Mhm,
And let them go. But somehow we have to find a balance in terms of, I need for you to think all of this through. And it reminds me of a story, because when my youngest son, I guess he was about 15 or 16, and he just wanted his independence, and he was determined to buy a used car. And so rather than tell him no, this is how I went about it. I took him to the car dealership.
mhm, mhm,
And when I got a moment and I got the salesperson to himself, I said to him, "We are not really buying a car. Listen, we are here because I want him to understand the numbers and the maintenance. And we're taking your time. I appreciate you for that. There's not going to be a sale here, but I want him to experience and to know and to hear from someone else, because sometimes the people that we love, they have a difficulty hearing us and getting through. And
mhm.
so I want to thank that car salesman, because I said, look, I want you to talk to a man to man.
Right, right, right. And sometimes, you people don't listen to those who are close. So they have to hear the same thing from somebody else. And you say, didn't I just tell you that? But it
Yep.
sounds different when it's coming from
Hmm.
somebody else. So as we as we continue to move forward and plan for our future, what are some tips that you would recommend that work well for you as you continue to move towards your retirement, you continue to evolve into the next level for Ann-Marie?
Oh, say that again, Sharon. Retirement. I'll say that again. I can't wait. I'm chopping at the bit. Several years away, mind you, but I am still chopping at the bit. I think what's important to know is the steps that I'm taking. For example, I have a 403B, so I'm meeting with the person who is basically my financial advisor. Um, this is how much money I want to be able to collect when I retire. How much do I have to invest and put in? How much will I be taxed? In terms of, I have the 403B instrument, but the school system also provides you with a pension. And many corporate, if you work in private sector, they provide you with some sort of incentive for you to stay there. So that's the second leg of my plan. What does my pension look like? And finally, what are the rules in terms of Social Security? So I'm educating myself now about those things.
Mm.
Now, I'm one of those people that sometimes I'm a little slow, so I need to go back and repeat it again.
Right.
So I'm doing this at least once a year. So I've been to the class 2 years in a row, and I'm going to go for another 3 years because I want to retire in 3 years. Two if I can, but let's say three. So I go to the class every year because every time I go, I pick up something that's new. The second thing is paying down debt. I'm trying not to make large purchases. Um, I'm proud of who I am in terms of I don't need to drive a fancy car, and it's okay for those people who do. I'm not I'm not throwing shade or anything like that. But for example, I put my money, I every month I go to a gym, and the gym is a little pricey because there are trainers there, right? So that's where my values are. I want to be healthy. So I'm invested now in my health, versus in a luxury car. And so those are the choices and decision making that I make. So I want to spend my money where my values are. And then finally, and I learned this, I call them young people now. I guess I've reached a certain age. They've taught me the value of multiple streams of income. And as soon as that just flew out of my mouth, I have to rephrase that because as a teacher, I have always done multiple streams of income, whether that's teaching after school, whether that is hosting a club, whether that is teaching summer school, whatever your jam is, whatever your thing is, have multiple streams of income. Bankruptcy taught me that, you know, that you have to have more than one place. It's no longer what our parents' generation was, where you stayed in one job for 30 years and you get the gold watch and you leave.
Right.
But right?
Yeah.
Life is not like that. So find multiple streams of income and be bold about it.
All right. So what I took away from what you just said is that we need to be educated. We need to know our numbers. And that means that you just don't look at, okay, this is what I get in retirement, but you also stated about the taxes. And sometimes we don't look at those deductions and what the bottom line is. We look at that gross and you're like, oh, I can live on that. But then you have to remember, you are taxed. You have other benefits that have to come out. Maybe not as much as they were working, but you still have benefits that are going to be deducted from that pension. And you said also looking at your Social Security and seeing what you're going to get from there. And then you also mentioned about placing your money where you with your values.
Yes.
So making sure that it's aligning, prioritizing yourself with your money so that you are living the life that you want to live versus the life that you have to live.
Correct.
Um,
And a note about living your values and keeping up with everyone else and FOMO, fear of missing out. It's going back to what I said earlier. There are some people that said this is important to me, but they're looking at their friend and they say, "Oh, I want to do that because my friend's doing that," you
mhm,
know? And that's how you run yourself into the ground,
mhm.
looking at what somebody else has. And so I want to be able to emphasize how much you need to know yourself and what's important to you.
Yeah.
And Sharon, if I may, I just want to talk about some of the blessings along the way.
Yes, yes.
So I want to shout out to the aunties and the uncles, the nanas and the grandpas and pop-pops and so forth. Because when I divorced, I found myself in a situation, and by the way, I let go a lot in my house. I'll talk about that in a minute if you want me to. But
Mhm,
the point I want to talk about is I'm in a situation where my income, I can afford paying a monthly mortgage, but I had no money for a down payment,
mhm,
none.
mhm,
And so I need to shout out and pay homage to my Auntie Sheila, because when Auntie Sheila transitioned, she her funds, her savings went to her 11 nieces and nephews, me being one of them. Voila, I had a down
What
payment.
what a
And I said,
blessing.
would you look at God?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
God made a way, because there was no way I was going to be able to
Right.
save,
Yes,
no matter how much I put aside. She blessed us.
yes,
So
yes,
God made a way. So you do what you can, and then you just ask God to make up the rest, to
yes,
lead you.
yes. So we have quite a couple of comments in the chat. Aletha said that she is mentally ready for her retirement, but she's still trying to figure out those numbers to make sure that they are all set. But she did ask a question also. She said, being a teacher, is your retirement age the same for full benefits?
Being a teacher, I guess they want us to die in a job because I, I laugh about this with the other teachers because they raised the retirement age to 67. And I'm just like,
Woo!
gonna be 67 up there trying to teach a 13-year-old.
Whoa, my eyes popped out my head.
Oh, because all along I'm thinking it's 65, right? And I went
Mm.
to one of those classes, they said 67. I said, well, that's out. We're not going to 67. We've tried not to go to 65. I'm trying to go to 62. I'm trying to
Right.
do that early retirement.
Mhm.
So tell me the question again. What does Alita want to know?
Well,
I'm just like,
I think what and Aletha, you make sure that you type in chat whether or not I'm interpreting what you're saying correctly. But full benefits for Social Security is normally based on
mm,
65 or so.
right.
So is that the full retirement age?
So no.
But now, yeah, you just kind of answered the
No. So
question.
if I come out at 62, I would not receive full benefits. And in fact, I would not, my benefits would be lower.
Mhm.
So it's on a sliding scale. So for example, if I retire at 65 and make 1,500 a month, I'm just making a number up. At
Mhm.
62, I would only make 1,200. At
Mhm.
67, I might make 1,800.
Right.
So it's on a sliding scale. And then when I come out at 62, I am not eligible for Medicare and Medicaid and all of that until I'm 65. So
Mhm.
I have to have a plan in those gap years. And the podcast is part of that. Ann-Marie wants to go out and write some books because one of the things I said is that I'm a writer. I want to do other things in my life. So when I leave the classroom at 62, it's not that I'm going to stop working. I'm going to evolve and I'm going to do something different.
Right.
Um, and sometimes I say, if I'm at the Bowie Bay Sox taking the tickets, work some part-time job where I don't have to think and consider all these analysis that I do every day and so on and so forth. So I fully intend to still be working, but just in a different capacity, different than where I am now. And I feel that's important, benefiting not just myself as I grow personally and look at what these next few years are going to mean for me, but for the children as well. They need that fresh, new, vibrant. It's somebody else's turn. It's
Mhm.
somebody else's turn. I
Right.
want to be like evergreen. I want to always grow.
All right, all right. So yeah, we have a lot of comments. Some people say they want to go at 64 or 65. So
Hmm.
hey, you're still young because you still have so much life ahead of you. And I always think about a saying that my cousin used to have on her wall. Basically, it was like the next part of my life, I'm going to be whatever. I don't even remember the rest of the saying, but
Right.
it was like at the time she was, or I might have been close to 50 at the time, and she had just turned 50, and I was like, wow, I still can have 50 more years of my life to do
Absolutely.
so much with that, take the learning from before and then apply it to the next half of my life. So I never think of the remaining part of my life as the final quarter, because it's so many other quarters that I could start at, be at the first quarter right now and still be moving
Yes.
forward.
You have an opportunity to design your life because when we were young, we didn't have many choices. Other people raised us. We're adults, we're trying to build something in our careers. We're trying to build something in our relationships. And now we're looking at what do I do? What is the legacy I'm going to leave? How do I make this life a life that I'm feel good about living? You
Yes, the
know,
legacy.
the name
Yes,
of my podcast about this life.
yes, yes. So
About this life.
Dee Dee put into the chat, make the rest of your life the best of your life.
Yes.
Yes,
You have to make the best of your life. And part of making the best of your life is being healthy
yes,
and being healthy physically, being healthy financially, and plan for the unexpected, you
yes,
know?
yes. And so, um, you said so much, so many great nuggets this evening. But again, share everyone how they can find you. So if they want to listen to those wonderful podcasts that they have.
Okay, absolutely. So if you go to About This Life, you can actually search it. I'm on Apple and I am also on Spotify. If you want to reach out to me, if you go to About This Life, make those three words all one word, About This Life dot dot co. So once again, About This Life dot callcast.co, and you can contact me there.
Right. And it is in the chat. So people can copy and paste that and be able to contact you, and make sure that you go and like, subscribe so you can listen
Mhm.
to a podcast, be notified every time a new one is released, because she has over 27. She mentioned 27
27,
episodes.
yes.
Yes, 27 episodes since 2023. That's amazing.
Yes.
That consistency is great. So kudos to you and all that you're doing. So within the last few minutes of our time together, um, I just wanted to hear from you. What final tips would you like to share as we move forward to end this first session of 2024? What's a tip that you like to give people to, not, I'm gonna rephrase this. What's a tip that you would like to give our listeners on how they can start off 2024?
How they can start off 2024. Okay, Sharon. Take us a few seconds to think about that.
Sure.
Um, find out what it is that you want. Like you peel away the layers. What is it that you want? Uh, if we're going to put it in perspective of money, because that's our topic, do we spend money on the things we buy because we really want them, or because there's something deep inside of us we're trying to fill? And we're hiding behind the money. So, what is it that we want our money to do for us? And where do we want to be? How are we going to get there? So, if you were to take some time in terms of reflecting on 2024, everybody does that at the beginning of the year, right? But just go just a little deeper, please, please, please go a little deeper than, okay, I want a new house or I want a new car. Uh, I want a raise or a promotion at my job. What is it that you want? Maybe you want a job that um, is aligned to your purpose, and then the money will follow. Maybe you want the freedom of the security of a reliable car, and that drives you wanting a car. Find out the root of what you want.
Great, great. And we know that your word for 2024 is what?
Evolving.
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 Yes, yes. So we'll continue to evolve. My word for 2024 is abundance. And it is me. I sat down and wrote down the areas of abundance, peace, joy, love, relationships. Is so many places in our lives that we can evolve, that we can find an abundance. It's not always about the financial parts of ourselves that we can move forward. So you all that are listening, pick that word that
Yes.
resonates with you for 2024 and go out there and do the thing and to make it happen. Thank you so much, Ann-Marie, for joining me this evening. It's been a
Thank you.
wonderful pleasure to engage with you this evening, and all our Girl Trek sisters that are
Yes.
online,
Thank you
and
for
all of
showing
my
up.
other wonderful friends and family. Thank you so much for joining. Again, like and subscribe to Ann-Marie's podcast, About This Life. Go to YouTube, Royalty Business Group, and like and subscribe to a YouTube channel. I do want to let you know next month, February 14th, I will be having Sabrina Hall, and she's going to be talking about how to write your story through your resume. She's a professional resume writer, and she's going to be talking to us about how to write your story through your resume. So make sure you join us at 7:30 Eastern Time on February 14th. Yes, I know that's Valentine's Day, but it's a Wednesday, and we can cook at home. So we can be online. We can have our nice, wonderful dinners with our boo and listen to our clock, listen to this information. So thank you all. And again, thank you, Ann-Marie, and thank you all for joining. And you all have a great remainder of your evening. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.